So let's try something different today. Take this as your tiny 5-minute art escape and slow down a bit with me. What a shame they're not men. That is what famous painter Edouard Manet said when he met Berthe and Berthe Morisot in 1868. Today, it of course sounds painfully anti-feminist and condescending. Back then, it was probably an odd mix of admiration and resignation. He instantly saw how much talent these two women had, and he also knew how hard the artwork would make it for them, simply because they were women in a space almost entirely run by men. I want to talk about both sisters today through one of Berthe's most beautiful works. It's called The Cradle from 1872. Now, if there's one impressionist who deserves much more space in our minds, it's Berthe Morisot. She shaped this movement from the very beginning, even though art history often treats her like a footnote instead of one of the driving forces. Her teacher, Camille Corot, a famous landscape painter himself, saw it early on. In a letter to Berthe and Berthe Morisot's parents, he wrote the following: "With natures like your daughters, my teaching won't just give them a few decorative skills. They will become painters." Corot basically told them, if you let art into this house, it will take hold of your daughters completely, and it will change their lives in ways you can't take back. And I can't tell you how right he was with that. Now let's take a look at The Cradle. This wonderful painting that at first glance feels so calm and serene. A mother watching her baby through this soft, almost dreamlike veil. What we're actually looking at is Edma, Berthe's sister, watching her daughter Blanche. And the way Berthe paints them, everything connects the two. The veil, those interlocking triangles between their bodies, even the mirrored angles of their arms. It's like she's quietly showing how deeply mother and child are woven together. But the longer you look, the more something unsettled comes through. A kind of emotional static beneath all that softness. I think Kelly Grovier from the BBC described it perfectly. He wrote, "The cradle is an onion of a painting. Its alluring, if unreachable essence swaddled in layers of semi-lucent veils that our eyes can never fully unpeel." And once you hear that, I think the details suddenly land differently. Her head leaning heavily into her hand, her fingers gently fidgeting at the veil almost automatically, her tired eyes somewhere between love and worry. You kind of begin to sense what many new parents know instinctively: the exhaustion, the quiet tension of suddenly becoming responsible for someone entirely. The way the veil falls, protective, almost private, feels like a gesture shaped by both love and overwhelm. There's a new kind of weight, a worry that's both soft and unrelenting, a complexity that doesn't resolve but lingers. Edma had actually trained to become a painter herself, not at an academy, but seriously enough that people around her could see her talent. And then she married naval officer Adolphe Pontillon. And with that marriage, her path into art more or less closed. Later, she wrote letters to Berthe saying she missed the varnished air of the studio we once shared. And when you read that, I think you can feel the subtext. Does she just miss painting? Or is she quietly even regretting that she ever stopped and built a family instead? Berthe's own story went differently. She married Edouard Manet's brother Eugène, and they also had a daughter together. But unlike Edma's situation, Eugène actually supported her painting, which wasn't a given at the time at all. During her own lifetime, Berthe actually became very well known. She showed her work often, sold paintings, and was one of the founding mothers of the Impressionist movement. The group of artists who broke with tradition and focused on light, everyday scenes, and the atmosphere of a moment rather than perfect detail. But even with all that, her name slowly disappeared from the lists where Monet, Manet, or Degas lived for decades. Not because her work mattered less, but because women were quietly pushed out of the story afterwards. And only much later did museums and historians start bringing her back into view again. This time, not as a side note, but as someone who helped shape the movement in the first place. But back to the painting, because there's something I can't stop thinking about. I'm asking myself the question, did Berthe paint also some of her own feelings into that scene? Because Edma leaving wasn't just losing a sister, it had real consequences for Berthe's work. Unmarried women at that time weren't allowed to wander the streets alone with a sketchbook. They needed a chaperone. So when Edma married, Berthe didn't just lose her closest companion, she also lost a person who made it possible for her to go outside and paint. That's why so many of her works take place indoors. That wasn't a stylistic preference, it was her only option. So maybe what we're seeing in this painting also reflects how Berthe felt about the whole situation. Very torn. Certainly in love with her niece on the one hand, but also mourning the bond and freedom she lost when her sister left. And this ambivalence you can feel throughout the whole painting, that's exactly what makes it so modern. The weight of leaving a job, you questioning yourself if you follow rules of society instead of listening to yourself when making big life decisions. The mixed feelings of parenthood, or losing a part of yourself while gaining something else. Honestly, this could have been painted today. The cradle might look different, more IKEA than 19th century, I guess, but the emotions would be exactly the same. It's complicated, it's human, and that's exactly what makes this work so timeless. I would like to quote Peter Schjeldahl. He was a very respected art critic from The New Yorker, and I love what he said about Berthe because it feels so spot on. Morisot is a visual poet of womanhood like perhaps no other painter before or since. Rather than looking at these women, you deduce what it's like to be them. Thank you so much for looking at this painting together, and I hope I'll see you next time.